Are you ready to invest in yourself today? Welcome to the Wealth Builders Podcast, where investment leader Billy Epperhart teaches you how to build wealth through applied biblical wisdom. Scripture says in Deuteronomy 8:18, "Remember the Lord, your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." At Wealth Builders, our goal is to teach you how to build wealth through applied biblical wisdom in your finances, your business, and your investments.
Hello and welcome to the Wealth Builders Podcast, where we help you make sense of making money for making a difference. I'm so glad you joined me today. I'm Karen Conrad, and today we're going to be talking about real estate, specifically how to find the right market to buy in. I talk to so many people that want to get into real estate, but they just can't seem to find the ratios in the right market to buy in where they can actually make money in this current real estate environment. And one of the mistakes I know we made for 2 years, yes, 2 years before we caught on, is that we were looking in our specific area. And we live in South Lake, Texas, where all of the prices of homes are just going through the roof. And there's like 10 to 20 offers per home. Oftentimes people are bidding $40,000 or more above asking price, and they're still not getting the property. And we were convinced that we had to buy real estate right around our home, and we could not find anything to work. Well, our son Levi started researching in areas based on these ratios that I'm going to be sharing with you that Billy and Becky through Wealth Builders taught us. And he identified a market about 2 hours outside of where we live, where those ratios do work. And it sort of opened this door of possibility for us. And we realized that if we've got a good team in these markets, there's no reason that we can't purchase the 2 hours away from our primary home. And recently, we've actually started investing down in Florida. So it opens the possibilities, but practically you'd be flying all over or driving for hours if you drove to check out different places to see if it works. And I'm going to be sharing with you how to research online. Then when you find the areas that work, you go and you take the trip to get your feet on the ground to look at the area, feel the community, and make decisions on purchasing. So I just want you to open your mind to the possibilities of investing. I want you to be encouraged that even in this market, you can make money investing in real estate. And for those of you that are looking to buy your first real estate property, your first investment property, this is going to be a real encouragement for you. I really like it with Levi's a millennial, and really enjoy hanging out with him and his friends because they're so tech savvy. They're so used to doing research online that it's kind of helped me and Dave to say, you know what, we can do this too. So let's get started. Here are the general mathematical ratios to look for in a market. Now, you may not hit all of these, but these are strong generalities for you to take a look at in a market. It's very possible to hit all of them. And when you follow these guidelines, you can have there with you is a minimum of $300 positive cash flow per door for the buy and hold. So let's look at these two and see how they work together. If you stay within a 1 to 1.5 monthly rent based on purchase price, that is really solid. And we were able to attain that in the properties that we purchased about 2 hours away from where we live. But let's say that we were in a tighter market and it just wasn't possible to get the 1 and 1.5% at this time. Then you want to look at a minimum positive cash flow, and that number is the $300. So when you get both of them, a 1 to 1.5% plus a $300 cash flow, that is ideal. And that is the position that we are in with our investments. And so I just want to tell you, if you look and you study, you can find markets that meet these. So there's the first two. The third one is you want to stay within 3 to 4 times the median income for the price of home. Notice this is not an average income, it's median income. And you can Google that and you can find out, what is the median income in this area that you're looking for a price of a home. And I'll give you an example of that as we go in, but all of this information is very easily accessible. And then number 4, you want to get a 10 to 20% cash on cash return. So I was in banking for 25 years, and one of my favorite bosses, he was president of a bank that I worked at. He looked at me and he would say, Karen, cash is king. And of course, we know Jesus is king in our life. But what he was saying is that if you have cash, you have options. If you have no cash, you do not have as many options. And some of you and I have actually been at times in my life where I was short on cash, and it is not fun. But what this is saying is for you to have the flexibility to be able to buy, for you to be able to really leverage the market. One of the areas you want to focus on is making sure that the cash you are investing is getting a solid return. So we like to aim for 10 to 20% cash on cash return. And let me give you an example of that. If you put $30,000 down on a property, you would want $3,000 to $6,000 net return annually, or $250 to $500 a month. So if I take $30,000 and I put it as a down payment, and maybe it includes other things, like maybe I did do some work on the property, maybe I had to put a new roof on, but it wasn't actually part of my down payment. I like to include all that, meaning what did I have to do to this property plus my down payment? What cash did I have to put in? Then when I look at the rent, I want my net return or my cash flow to represent 10 to 20% of the total amount of cash that I had to put in. So when we look at these 4 things, the 1 to 1.5% monthly rent based on purchase price, staying within the 3 to 4 times median income for the price of the home, having a minimum of $300 positive cash flow per door for a buy and hold, vacation properties could be different, and having a 10 to 20% cash on cash return, you are in the guidelines for a very strong potential for real estate investing. So how do we research to find out areas that have these mathematical ratios? Well, number 1, you want to determine your potential area. And I do this by drawing a radius from the area that I'm willing to buy in. As I mentioned to you earlier in the podcast, we were willing to go initially 2 hours out from the place that we lived. We thought that was feasible. And we drew a radius and started studying communities in that radius. Now we look at the ratios. We also look for things that what's the up and coming business? What is the demand in the rental market? I'll be covering some of those things. I'll do as much as I can in the podcast. I'll be teaching much more on this at the actual Wealth Builders Conference. But that way you're only looking at areas that you right now have a comfort level of buying in. Next, go to realtor.com or Zillow. Those are the ones I use. There's probably other ones out there too, and begin studying the market. So how does that happen? Well, what you do, and I'll just use realtor.com. That's the one that I usually do my initial research on. And then I'll look at Zillow for some additional content. But I like the way that the map on realtor.com lays out. So there's a lot of parameters in there. I use the app. And let's just say that I'm looking at an area. I'll use Buena Vista, Colorado, just for an example, for just example purposes. So I would enter into the app Buena Vista, Colorado, and it would show me all the properties that are for sale in that area. So I start out and I want to look at pretty much all the properties if possible from a map perspective. You can also do it from a list perspective. And I start gathering information on it. And I look at price per square foot. I look at maybe average prices of the home. I look at how much can I get for what price. For example, if it's a 2-1 and it's $500,000, I might not have a comfort level for that. So you get familiar with the market. The next thing that you do is you compare what you're seeing on the market to recently sold. So there's a tab in realtor.com that you simply click on recently sold, and it's going to show you what homes in the area have sold for recently. Why is that important? This is really important because when you go into a market, one of the things you want to make sure is going to happen for you is that the property that you locate is going to appraise. One thing that we're seeing right now is that the prices on the market are increasing faster than the appraisals are catching up to it. So what happens? You end up with a gap. So sellers might get a contract, at $500,000, but if that appraisal comes in at 425, you've got a gap that you have to deal with. So I want to get an idea of that in the market. It also tells me if this area is quickly appreciating or if it's something that's a little bit more stable. Then what I do is I go in the filter and I ask to hide what's called contingent or pending. I only want to see the active properties. Why is that helpful? That gives me an idea of the true inventory of a market. And I can start to assess how quickly properties are selling. One of the areas that we buy in, if you were to research it, you would see that there's about 23 homes that are on the market. But how many of those are actually active and not under contract? Only 5. Wow, that is pretty amazing. That means that there is very little inventory, and you could be at risk in that situation too of an overinflated market where things aren't appraising. So there's a time frame that you have to catch up with. All right, the next thing I do, and all of this is on realtor.com or Zillow, is then I want to find out what the rental demand is in that area. Why is that important? It's important because if I go in and I buy a property, and our main goal, and most investors' main goals, are to do what we call a buy and hold. And I'll tell you why that's kind of a very important part of your portfolio. So I want to know if I purchase a property, how much it's going to rent for in the market, and what kind of competition do I have? So if we go back to the area that I was describing to you that we're investing in, what you'll find is that there's only like one house that is on the market for rent. And as an investor, that makes me very, very happy because that means when I purchase the property, I'm going to already have big demand for somebody to rent that property. If we go back to the example I was sharing with Buena Vista, and you can look this up, what I'm seeing here and what I studied out in this market is that the prices are very high. But what I found when I clicked on the rental part is there's not a lot of properties for rent, but the ones that are for rent do not match up to the 1%. Okay. So this would be an area that I would look at, assess, and then realize that the buy and hold market, or another way to say that is the price earnings ratio of the area, has not caught up to the home prices. And you'll see that. Now, eventually it probably will catch up. But when you've got interest rates as low as they are today, it's driving prices up. And in some markets, the prices of those homes are at a level that is sitting around that 1% of rents. But a lot of areas, they've got a very inflated sales market, and the buy and hold rental rates are lagging. And so you can do all of this research right from your phone. If you've got downtime, maybe you're waiting for a flight or you're on a flight, and you're just looking for something to do on your phone, you can go out and study markets very quickly with what I've just shared with you and quickly assess areas that are potentials. Now, on a really interesting part here, I just out of curiosity decided that I would go and research the town that I grew up in. I never looked at Wells, Minnesota as a place that might be somewhere to invest in. And so, just to kind of prove that I could use this formula and find out anywhere, I went and researched in Wells, Minnesota. It's a little town between Mankato and Albert Lea, not a lot of industry there. But what I found is that the ratios would actually work in Wells, Minnesota. One of our guys that teaches with us, and he's a coach, is Dan Dyer. He is in rural Indiana and he invests in small towns and he is doing amazing. So I think that's one of those other obstacles that we need to take a look at and maybe get rid of, is the thought that the only place to make money in real estate is in hot markets or very volatile markets. And that's not the case. A matter of fact, with a long term buy and hold, stable markets can be really, really good. So, where did you grow up in? Have you ever thought about going back and purchasing real estate? Or is that little town that you drive through and you just wonder, like, wow, it would be nice to own property here, or a place you like to vacation? With the information that I'm providing, and I realize I'm just giving you a high level because we don't have a lot of time, you can start to begin to assess properties and find out which areas are potential areas for you to start looking at buying real estate in. It's fun for those of you that like to research. It can be challenging. It's a way for us. I love to get Levi involved in it, so you can engage your children in this process and assign them to go out and help you to find real estate. But really, it helps you to value your time. It helps you to be really concise with any resources that you're going to put into your real estate search. And with the parameters I'm sharing, you can go into a market and be confident that if you are within these guidelines, you are in a good position to be building your real estate portfolio. So, again, this is just a very brief overview. I want to share a lot more on this with you at the Wealth Builders Conference. But I hope that you've listened to this podcast encouraged and then also just challenged to go out and see if you can find an area that supports the basics or the foundation of good real estate investing metrics. So I'm going to repeat those 4 metrics for you. 1 to 1.5% monthly rent based on the purchase price for a buy and hold. Number 2, 3 to 4 times median income for the price of the home. Try not to go above that. Number 3, have a minimum of $300 positive cash flow per door for that buy and hold. And number 4, 10 to 20% cash on cash return on that property. Now, I told you that I would go into a little bit more depth about why a buy and hold is an investment to look at for your real estate portfolio. There are 3 ways that a buy and hold can really help you to increase your wealth. First of all, Billy teaches on something called the law of leverage. If you have not heard him teach on that, I really encourage you to listen to that teaching. You can actually go to Wealth Builders University, which is our learning platform. Go to wbuniversity.online and you can join for a whole year for just $299. We have access to all of the training and teaching, part of a live mastermind call where you have Q&A directly with the instructor or the coach. And in there, Billy has a real estate series and he talks about the law of leverage. So how this pertains to buy and holds. And this was life-changing for us. So if you don't have a revelation of this, I think it could be really impactful for you as well. When I take, for example, $30,000 and I invest it in real estate, right now, I can tell you in Florida, one of the areas that we're investing, they're seeing a 20% appreciation per year. Now, that's not a guarantee for the future. This is just for examples. If I take that $30,000 and I put it in the market and I earn, let's just say, a 20% return, I am earning a 20% return on the $30,000, which we would all say is a great return. And that would be $6,000 in a year. But when I take my $30,000 and I use it as a down payment on a $300,000 property, my 20% earnings or return is not on $30,000. It's on the entire asset of $300,000. So when I go into the market and I earn 20% and I invest 30,000 cash, it's a $6,000 return, which is impressive. If I take that $30,000, I invest in a $300,000 house, I get a 20% return. It's $60,000 because it's based on the asset, the total asset, not the amount of cash that I put into it. So that is one reason for a buy and hold, because you've got the appreciation that is in that property. And there's a lot of things you can do with that appreciation. But let's just say I hold on to it for 10 years. Think about the appreciation on that, and it's not taxable until the time that I sell it. Or at that point, it doesn't have to be taxable at the time I sell. I can do a 1031 exchange or something like that. So that's one reason. Another thing with the buy and hold is if you've got a mortgage, which we actually talked to you about law of leverage, and it's actually a good thing to, especially in this environment, to borrow money on a real estate investment if other parameters are in place. But then the renter, the tenant, is paying my mortgage. So I'm earning on an appreciation and somebody is paying down the amount I owe on that property. So can you kind of see the gap that creates? My appreciation, the value of the home is going up, and the amount I owe on the property is going down, and I'm not having to make a monthly payment. And then the bonus, you might just say that this is icing on the cake, is on top of that, we have a minimum cash flow of $300 a month per door. So I've got appreciation in most markets and in most cases where the value of my home is going up. You don't ever want to only have appreciation. That's why we give you all these guidelines to follow. I have got a cash flow coming in from the rent, a minimum of $300 a month. And the principal, or the amount that I owe on the property, is being paid for by somebody else, the tenant, and it's reducing the amount that I owe on the property. And I haven't even talked to you about tax advantages. So there's so much. That's why we love real estate. That's why Billy and Becky say they love real estate. It's their favorite investment. And through today's podcast, you've at least been introduced to how you can start to research properties, just kind of the basics. There's a lot more to learn, but the basics to start to locate the area that you might want to start to invest in. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this has been helpful for you. I'm Karen Conrad, Vice President of Wealth Builders. And again, I want to invite you to join us for the Wealth Builders Conference. We've got Billy speaking, I'll be speaking, and we've got our special guest, Lance Wallnow, joining us. So we're really excited about that. You don't want to miss it. It's in Denver, Colorado. Go to wealthbuilders.org, go to events, and get registered today. I hope that I see you there. Thanks again, and God bless you.
We hope you learned something of lasting value today from this Wealth Builders podcast. If you'd like any tools, teachings, or resources mentioned in the podcast, you'll find them online at wealthbuilders.org. Wealth Builders exists to teach you how to build wealth through applied biblical wisdom in your finances, your business, and your investments. Wealth Builders is a nonprofit organization. We depend on your donations to keep this podcast running. Please consider donating to us on wealthbuilders.org.